1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
And there you go with the crack of the bat. We are off and running. Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
And we are talking about 1935, winding our way through a trilogy of books and just the amazing year that 1935 was in Metro Detroit. So the 35, because what's the span? It was like 18 months through 35, and then a couple of the final games were in 36.
I say 7 month stretch of time,
because hockey doesn't fall in one calendar year.
Exactly.
Ever. It overlaps into two.
Yeah.
Did football overlap?
So, I mean,
two?
theoretically, you could win it, if they won it. I mean, you could have the 34-35 Red Wings win, and then it would count for that same concept because, it would run from, April through, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. It wouldn't be the same, actually. It wouldn't be 7 months. It would be like 8 months or 9 months. And so it's, seven. We're talking about a 7 month stretch of time with all the majors.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That is, it's a small window for that amazing work that got completed. City of Champions. This episode 100. Charles, congratulations. Most podcasts don't make it past 7 episodes, and today we are stumbling into episode 100. So I congratulate you.
I congratulate the both of us, Jamie. It's been a heck of a journey, bro.
It is. It's been. Did you think we'd make it to 100 episodes?
I didn't really think about that. I didn't really think about 100. It was kind of like, honestly,
we can syndicate now.
Honestly,
that's sitcom.
To be honest with you, before we started doing this show, and when you even called, I remember you first called me to do a show, and there was so many people that I had been given the runaround by.
Yeah,
like there was a ton of. I've had like no less than 3 people wanting to do documentaries,
right? And
every single one of them has fallen through. It's a lot of hype. There's been some that are closer than others. There's been some like sort of people that we've gotten closer than others to doing something like that.
Yeah. And
it's just falling apart every time. And so like for this particular one, I don't want to say I was like negative, but
I'll believe when I see it.
Yeah, exactly. That was what it was. Just it was
proofs
like,
in the pudding.
So yeah, exactly. Like cautiously optimistic,
right.
Which is sort of my nature, anyways. Like it's. I'm the type of person that like when I say I'm going to do something, I try to do it.
Say it, mean it, do it.
Yeah, and so, and so I kind of give everybody that same. I give everybody that same sort of benefit of the doubt,
sure.
But at the same time, it's just
you were a little shell shocked from people who hadn't followed.
Yeah,
through.
So that's what I mean. And then of course, if you remember from the beginning, we were just about to launch the show, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
We were literally on the cusp of doing our first show.
Yeah.
And then it was like February of 2020.
Right. And we paused.
Yeah, we had to pause. But then we still ended up doing some of the Man Cave happy hours. I did like 5 shows with you.
Yeah.
With the Joe Louis bourbon.
Joe Louis Jr.
Yeah. We did like 5 shows during there. So that was kind of like the pre-City of Champions run,
Yeah. Chris said, congratulations. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for rolling around with us, man.
Yeah, it's thanks for the logo. Yeah, I'm serious because I printed banners and T-shirts and jerseys.
No, and then but it was awesome. And and then my first trip into the studio, I was like, the studio's amazing. The original studio was amazing. This studio's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, and then the thing about it was in the first few episodes, because I guess maybe it was like maybe the cautious optimism, maybe I was a little too much on the cautious side rather than the optimism, because the first few shows I remember it was like the most ill prepared I've been for any show.
Right.
And like I was getting dates wrong and months wrong and kind of like going, and I think it was kind of like this, like I was like, dude, if I'm going to do this show, I've got to dedicate, because the thing that people have to understand is, is that this third book I finished up in 2014.
Okay.
And since then, my entire focus has been on baseball.
Right.
Everything I do is baseball.
Yep.
I study. People have heard me talk about this, this analytics thing, this new discovery thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of these days, maybe we can do, we're probably, we'd like to go do some like Tigers and talk more specifically about some of this stuff.
Sure.
But everything I've done for the last, since 2000, really, since I wrapped up this third book, with the exception of 2017, which I spent the entire year writing the screenplay. I mean, literally, I gave myself a year to write the screenplay and did. But besides 2017, like every single waking minute has been devoted towards refining this new baseball strategy and like studying baseball, studying statistics, trying to find a way that the data that I use doesn't trying to find a way it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And writing business plans, just basically reshaping the way that I see baseball going in the future. And that's like everything I've done. And so the tough thing has been the way my mind works is that like once it's tough for me to like when I'm locked in on a project, I'm 100% full time all day, every day until it's done. I can't stop doing something until it's done.
So we locked in on the baseball project, and then I'm like, hey, let's do the podcast.
Let's do the podcast.
Like, oh, I gotta get back into that. I gotta get my facts.
Well, that's
straight.
what I was trying to say. I was at first I thought it was just something I could do. It's just like an hour a night. Who cares? I can just jump into it. I wrote these books. I've written so much on this. It's just gonna be something I can just recall from memory. I've written so much on it. And then I was like, and after the first 3 shows, I realized I was not doing this subject justice by not at least being refreshed, by not maybe taking a quick look at some of the, the information that's come out on the internet since 2014.
Well, it's fun. We found a few new nuggets of things.
Oh, tons, too, many. I've learned a ton. I've learned an absolute ton. Yeah. And that's what I mean. And that's what I'm saying is that's one of the things that's been interesting is like refreshing my knowledge on the subject, now in 2023. I mean, it's been 9 years since I wrote these books. So the amount of information that's gotten onto the internet is staggering, so there's all kind like this Herbert Mendelson, we're going to talk about a little bit today. There's a ton of, the stuff I read today was not available in 2014. I mean, we've got some story back, some backstory information and way more than I had when I wrote these books. So,
all right. So we're going to get into that. So episode 100. And if you've listened to any one of those 100 or many or several, thank you. Do us a favor. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. Tell a friend, right? That's been the best thing for us. So share it with somebody else, tell a friend. And share it out. So that would be
and also hit the like button and share it.
Yeah. So like
button.
Likes are good. Follow, collect, subscribe, all those podcast things and all the podcast places for sure. But yeah, so thank you for coming along. Wearingfunny.com is where you can get the cool t-shirts at.
Yeah.
They're very cool.
But,
I did a photo shoot and I was wearing my t-shirts.
Heck yeah.
Jerseys.
Not yeah.
So I might have a radio project on the horizon.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
For what? For just your own personal radio, like some kind of.
There's the people who started 89X way back in the day in the late 80s. I think it was 89 is when they started it. 89, 90, so right in there. They're launching a new internet radio and
awesome, man.
Greg Gnip's back in, Kerry Bertrand, one of the original 89X DJs back in, Greg St. James, who founded 89X.
Are you going to do like talk show stuff or music?
It's music format.
Oh, good for you, man.
It's an amazing music format. It's Radio Cobra Detroit.
Sweet, dude.
So
I've heard of that. I mean,
so it's all over the interweb.
That's freaking awesome.
So you can listen on the line, Radio Cobra Detroit. So I was taking pictures for that, and I was wearing my City of Champions.
Heck yeah,
because
dude.
It's a Detroit thing. So
that's freaking awesome, man.
Maybe we'll share some of those pictures. But thanks for everybody who's listening and subscribe and leave a comment. And wearingfunny.com is where you can get the gear. That's how I got on that. How did I get on that tangent? How did I get on that meat tangent?
We go on tangents.
I do.
I
love my meat tangents. It's all about me. It's all about me.
Every once in a while, I'll let Jamie throw in a tangent.
So it's been kind of nice over the years. But it's been a couple of years here
doing the show. Well, since that right after the shutdowns.
I have it in my calendar.
It was like
somewhere.
It was like mid 2020 or
City of Champions first broadcast anniversary. I have it in my calendar, so it pops up. But
well, I think it was like October of 2020, something like that.
I thought it was like June or July.
Well, was it? Okay, it was right after those shutdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, we jumped right into it.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean is that we had already started doing doing those man cave happy hours. So that's what was kind of like gave me hope into the matter. And then, like I said, for me, the tough thing, it might not sound like that. I mean, I don't know how it sounds, but like I say, for me, I'm on such a one track mind. Like it's just baseball, right. Every single, and it's hard. And like this, and for the listener, like this is all. That's like when I'm like that's all I do. I spend a lot of time in these like art stores, like selling, like I found like the perfect job, which allows me, I get to sell my stuff in these stores. I have my own like little store inside of a bigger store. It's a year-round indoor art fair. It's like a fantastic gift shop.
Yeah.
And I'm basically in the mall all day, just, I ring up customers and stuff like that. And I've been doing this for years but it's just the perfect place because all the artists are supposed to work hours in the store, but instead they pay me to work their hours for them because we have to work a certain amount of hours to maintain our display.
Yeah.
And so it's perfect for me because it's almost like a research grant. So I just get to sit there all day and study and research and write. And that's what I'm saying. So like all day I'm like baseball. It's all I do is just research, study, write. It's just, it's an insane amount of information I do every single day. And then like, all of a sudden I'm like, message Jamie and he's like, show tonight, and I'm like, yeah. And then I got to like stop what I'm doing, and then like spend about 4 or 5 hours getting ready for the show. And it might not sound like that, oh, Charles, it's just like one night a week, but like I say, but the way that my mind is wired, it's like, it's not that it's just like, I got to stop what I'm doing. It's like, no, you don't got to stop. I have to retrain myself a little bit. I've had to. Like you're not stopping what you're doing. You're doing two things.
Sure. You can do two things. I do 40.
I know it doesn't sound like it's that like big, like, but the way my mind works is for it because I'm like, okay, I got to stop. Looking into the 2023 Cincinnati Reds. Like I got to stop like today. Like looking into the Cincinnati Reds today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just kind of studying what they're doing. And then I'm like, I gotta, go into Herbert Mendelson, and it's like, it's just such a departure from where I was at, and but I've been getting, I've kind of retrained myself, I think we've been doing pretty well for 100 shows,
It was July of 20.
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
2020.
There we go.
No, 2021. Because the first
2021 or 2020?
2021.
Are you sure? Because it was after the shutdowns. I thought we jumped right into it after the shutdowns.
Did we? Now I'm talking out of turn.
Yeah, no, I think it's 2020.
Because it was I just went to it to confirm. Oh yeah, 2020. So because the first videos we posted on YouTube were August 11th of 2020. So I'm pretty sure we recorded at the end of July, and I finally got them.
Yeah, that's what because I remember right after the shutdowns, we jumped right into it.
But
there were still people like wearing masks and all that. You know what I mean? Like, but we were still. But I was happy because we're like nobody was like really wearing masks in here. We were just kind of like back to normal life in here, which is awesome.
Yeah. So, but there's been over the 100 episodes. There's been I found it really fascinating that people connected to the story and family members and relatives have found the podcast and have listened and thanked us for it. Going back to the episode number 18, and that was talking about when talking the Golden Huddle, with Tom.
Yeah, I know. So I've loved having Tom in here. That was a great segment. Tom was in here like every day. I love Tom.
Tom was very cool. But this was from MC Presnell. Glenn's my first cousin.
Yeah.
First cousin, one generation removed. Late in your podcast, you were discussing the selection of the Detroit colors, the Detroit jersey colors. Glenn had told me when I was visiting him at his home in 2002 that both he and his wife, Catherine, were visiting George Richards, the owner, in the office. Richard had a number of samples laid out in the office, and it was Catherine that told George Richards to go with the Honolulu blue. And Glenn credits that decision to his wife, Catherine.
Well, let's just say that I hope that they stick with that this year because they're talking about these alternate jerseys. I was saying this before the show. And I've been watching the Lions for my whole life, and I've been watching them wearing the same sort of uniforms, and I've been dreaming that they're going to win a championship wearing these same, gear that they've been wearing, like that Barry Sanders wearing in the 90s and all that, man. And it's like, now they're like, check it out, the Lions have new jerseys this year. And I'm like, no, they're supposed to be, they're supposed to be good this year. I want to see them be good. And I'm like, I don't want to see them wearing some brand new, NFL street uniform or something, whatever they call it, with like neon blue or something. Like, no, dude, Honolulu, that's our colors.
I know.
We've been losing wearing it for long enough. I want to see them win wearing.
Well, maybe we need the fresh. Maybe
no, we don't need it. They were winning last year. They won their last. They had a great.
They did. They're that closer, man.
Yeah,
with Green Bay. That was
they were great last half of the year, and I want to see them be great this year in their traditional gear, man.
All right.
I don't want to see them coming out and wearing all kinds of crazy get-ups, man.
The throwback is they're only throwing it back to like the 70s or whatever.
Well, the throwbacks
the logo. They're going to the logo.
Yeah, if they do that, then I don't know. Yeah, but it's just like I like that logo, but that's not. I want to see the gear.
If you're gonna go back.
Well, they
go back
on Thanksgiving.
If you're celebrating the 90th.
Well, on Thanksgiving they wear the all silver helmets, which is sweet. I'm cool with that. I have no problem with that because they've been doing that for 30 years too.
Right.
But I'm saying, like, I've been watching them my whole life wearing this particular jersey with the 80s, the 80s, 90s logo line on their helmet.
Yeah.
With their, with this very particular type of thing. I don't want to see like the black jerseys with the tan pants. I don't want to see that. I want to see the Lions look that we've had for the last 20, 30 years. We've been terrible. And I want to see them win in it, dude.
Yeah.
That's so hard. Is that such a big request?
It's not.
I mean, it's like the Pistons. Like the Pistons, their Pistons have that classic Bad Boys, era 89, 90s Pistons look.
Yeah,
and then when they came out with the turquoise teal, where it says Pistons on or whatever, with the horse with the tailpipes.
Yeah.
I don't want to see them win a championship in that gear. I want to see that classic Detroit Pistons jersey, man.
Yeah.
So, or any other facsimile, we've got to look, man. I want to keep it. I mean, you can wear it for a night or something like that, but I mean, win with your gear that you've been like. There's an old saying. It says, "Dance with who brung you." Right? You go to the dance, you dance with who brung you.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the jersey that brought you to this point. Now rock it.
So here's another comment that came through. This one was on episode number 9. Going way back, and this was episode number 9. We were talking about the movie Play Ball. It was our second episode talking about the movie Play Ball and George Moriarty. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And someone chimed in and said, I wanted you to know David Moriarty is the son of George, and as a resident at the facility I managed, he was so moved by this and hearing the story of his father, it made his entire year. Thank you so much for bringing these memories back to life for him.
That's amazing. I know.
So we've been reaching out to these folks. I'm going to try to record bits with them and we'll put these out if we can, because it's like emails aren't quite.
I want to go see the Miss American 9 down in South Carolina. I want to take a cruise in that thing.
Yep. That's coming up. We'll talk. We got that comment coming up, but episode number 11, the Forgotten Genius of Potsy Clark. Episode number 11. Potsy Clark was my great grandfather. This is from Alvin Weaver. Alvin Weaver writes to us and he says, Potsy Clark was my great grandfather's brother. Potsy Clark was my great grandfather brother. All right.
So it's like his great uncle.
Yeah. Grew up with him as a legend in the family. The whole Clark family was deeply involved in sports. There's something like 10 or 12 kids in the family. That's old school. Colleen was one of 8. And if I remember correctly, another one of his brothers became a longtime college football coach. So there you go. And then there's who is RRB or RB? Yeah, RRB has left a lot of comments. So RRB, thank you for all your comments, and Chris has left a lot of comments as well. So I don't know if that's Chris, just on a different thing.
I'm not sure.
Here's another one coming on episode number 29. This is in the stories of the Red Wings. I met Doug Young's nephew a few years ago. So this is just somebody who met the nephew of Doug Young, and he was wearing one of his Stanley Cup rings, and I got to try it on.
Jeez,
So
that's
it's
sweet.
like, yeah, we were talking about one of the Red Wings there.
I haven't heard that comment. That's
Doug
pretty
Young.
cool.
Mm-hmm. That's
there's a bunch of I guess when you read them all out in a row like that, there's a lot of people that have. You're right. There is a lot of connections.
So RRB, just like, oh wow, look at that old newspaper. It's just amazing.
And it's crazy that they connected with people like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're actually they're finding us on the finding the show.
RRB's
awesome.
another comment is Jamie finding a way to make the podcast not safe for work.
Who said that?
RRB. Just because I'll swear.
Oh yeah.
I'll swear.
I try to keep it clean around these parts.
I know. I get a little raunchy.
It's all good,
especially if we're kicking a few back. All right. RB, there was another one.
You said the word if.
Chris. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was trying to clean it up. Trying to clean it up a little bit. And then all right. More from Chris. Holly Cardon. And that this was the Miss America 10 episode that we did, episode 61 and 62, that we recorded that one live. Out at the Packard.
Yeah, that
was.
was. I love that. I love that show.
So
I love the on location show.
Yeah, the videos are interesting to see. It was great because we were sitting there.
That was super cool, man.
Like we were as close as you and I are.
The boat was our backdrop, man.
Mm-hmm. Definitely worth a listen, a look.
Yeah,
on YouTube.
That was a great show. I love that one.
Episode.
The two of them. We did 2 shows for that.
Yeah, well, we went on and on. I'm like, I gotta chop this in half. So episode 61 and 62 happened there, and this is Holly. Lep posted on that one, and she said, my husband stumbled across your podcast and shared it with me. My father was Charles Mistley, who owns the Miss America 9. My uncle owns the Miss America 10. So the two brothers, Charles had
the 10 was
the 9. The 10 was
they're storing it for him there.
Yeah, he keeps it there.
Yeah. Well, where else are you gonna keep it? That thing is monstrous.
Well, the 9 is in the water.
Yeah, the 9 runs. That's what's so amazing. The 10, but the 10. That thing is a monster. That thing you can't even until you're actually sitting there behind it. You're like, this thing is
like
the
long as a Greyhound bus.
It's like a bus. It's a monstrous boat, dude.
It is.
Like just to get that thing seaworthy is a Herculean task. That thing is monstrous.
So, all right, but yeah, so she read, my husband stumbled across the podcast, shared it with me. My father was Charles. He owns the 9, and my uncle owns the Miss America 10. Which was in that video. My sisters and I grew up taking the 9 around the country and fondly remember the people and places where we went. My father was always so gracious in taking people for a ride on the boat and showcasing its power to spectators who traveled great distances to see her. It wasn't until your podcast that I learned the extensive history of the Miss Americas.
Really?
And the Goldworth, the Gold Cup, and the Harmsworth. It's kind of like Garwood's teddy bears. I remember riding in between the seats in the rear in a small spot with the engines. My dad would say, don't touch these, they're hot, because the engines are
heck yeah, they
right
are.
There. It sounds so crazy, but that was the boat that was planned. It was absolutely exhilarating, and the thought of moving never crossed my mind. She was like so close. She was like, don't touch it. So thank you for exploring this history. If you ever make it to South Carolina, let us know. The Miss America 9 is being restored, and it's in pristine shape. And we would love for you to broadcast from the helm.
That's awesome.
So man. I messaged her. I'm going to try it. I do. I want to get down to
that would be amazing.
South Carolina. So there we go. So we've
that's
reached
a great
out.
comment too. That was I didn't realize because we've read that before, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess I didn't at the time when you last read it. I didn't hear the part about that that the show actually helped her understand the history of it.
Yeah. It's like, these are cool, famous boats, and she didn't really know it.
That's awesome, man.
So there you go. So that's some of the recap from the 100. Thank you for your comments and listening. And it's fun that we're touching the family.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's awesome that they found the show. You know, like they've just. Because we didn't advertise it to them to watch it. They just found it.
They found us. Yeah.
That's what's amazing. So, that's amazing, man.
Malcolm Shaw gave us a heart.
Nice. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Malcolm. And so there you go. So those are the comments. And of course, Chris posting like crazy. His last comment was, this episode has more endings than the Lord of the Rings.
Dang.
Because we were like, we were stopping and we never stopped.
We didn't really plan much for the show. It was more of like we have Herbert Mendelson on deck. And
not this way. He commented on a previous episode.
Oh, you read off a previous.
We were trying to when the Dixie Oils. We were meandering around.
A little
bit, kind of like this now. But anyway,
this is our 100th episode. We can do kind of whatever.
Yeah.
So we got Herbert Mendelson on deck, but we're sitting there talking about some recollections and some fond memories and that, because it's been 100 episodes. It's like 100 hours minimum.
I gotta tell you, I'm thinking back. It's I don't know who's my more favorite, if it's Walter Hagen or Eddie Tolan and Willis Ward. That combination of the coverage that we did for Eddie Tolan and Willis Ward, or the coverage of Walter Hagen.
Eddie Tolan, Willis Ward was an interesting diversion. How we went off to Willis Ward, like that was not planned.
And I think it was like because some new stuff came up for us.
Yeah.
And for you, and I love when there's new stuff for you, because you did so much research on this. It's great when you find new stuff.
Well, it took us off in a different direction of like, because that's what I'm saying. We actually get to talk through and hash through these these things, which for me was just presenting the story on paper. But then we actually get to hash it out in conversation and stuff. It has a totally different dynamic.
So I think out of the stories we covered, those two are my favorite. I can't tear which one I liked more.
Oh, your favorite like segments that we do, like your favorite overall segments,
the favorite chunks so far. Those are my two favorites.
Really? That's
yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's tough for me to. I love them all. It's tough to. It's tough to even pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. I mean, I love them all. Garwood has always been my favorite story.
Mm-hmm.
Garwood was my favorite story from
the action in the start. And that comes from the book that we had read.
Yeah.
As we were reading the Garwood story, because we relied heavily
on the Speedboat Kings
on that book. Nope, that's the Walter Hagen book. I'm pulling up the wrong cover.
Well, the Hagen book was good too, man. Hagen.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Once you start opening up the Hagen story, Hagen was there for every major development of golf.
Mm-hmm.
He was we basically broke, and that's that's probably my favorite thing that we've done in this entire show is I think we've done a pretty good job at showing how the history of sport runs through this story.
Mm-hmm.
Like what sport have we talked about? Maybe with the exception of the Tigers, which we're going to really go into that. That's like the next thing after we get through the minor champions.
Yeah,
we're going to go after the Tigers again, because I don't think, that was the first thing we started out with. And as I mentioned, we just kind of powered through it in 5 episodes, but because it's the story of the Detroit Tigers, of course, merits very, deep dive.
Yep.
And so a far deeper dive than we gave it. And so, I mean, we could be talking about the Tigers for a year, probably. I mean, that's the kind of content that merits. But but every single sport, the story of hockey, it runs right through Detroit, right through the story of the Red Wings. We began with like the birth of the Stanley Cup, and the same with boxing. We talk about boxing and how the development of boxing and how Joe Louis was like this, the pivot upon which like boxing went from being like a barroom brawler sport. It was more than that. Of course, Jack Dempsey was more than that. They had boxing matches that we would certainly recognize today, but Joe Louis was such a technician.
Right.
He was like really the first combination of like a technical boxer mixed with that just pure brute force power. Like he was a combination. And it's like after Joe Louis, you had to be both. You couldn't be just like a barroom brawler type. You would get totally smoked by anybody that would come along. And so, it's like in every sport, like, golf with that. In football, we showed how the NFL, we showed how the NFL was like this evolving league. And I mean, hell, in 1933-34 is when the ball was reduced in size and it opened up the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the Iron Man game and how it led to the first indoor NFL, into the first NFL championship. That was the first NFL championship game, was the Portsmouth Spartans playing the Bears.
Yeah.
And how that game led specifically to the NFL dividing into 2 leagues, a Western and Eastern, so that every year thereafter they could play in a NFL championship game.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this, that's what's so, I think that we've done a pretty good job at showing how, how like the story, like the City of Champions story is not just like, oh, for Detroit, people that are interested in Detroit sports. I think we've done a fair job at showing that like this is a story that really applies to anyone who has any interest whatsoever in understanding the phenomena of the growth of American professional sports.
Right.
You can factor in other team. Every other team has is mentioned in this story in some way or another. Even if like the Green Bay
fan of another city.
Yeah, even if you're a fan of the Green Bay Packers, in order to understand who the Lions were, you have to understand that the fact that they were the Portsmouth Spartans, that they had to overcome the Packers, that the Packers were a dynasty, and them having overcome the Packers is what led them into it. It led to their successes because you're only as good as the people you play against. Like if they overcome the Packers, and then of course the Bears in 1935 itself, like those other teams factor into the story, and so you're learning about your own team. You're learning about your own team at the same time. So that's what I'm saying. Like this story, I think it's relevant. A lot of people like it's a niche subject, but I don't think so, man. Like Joe Louis is international. The story of Joe Louis and the story of Joe Louis's rise, more specifically,
right,
belongs to the people around the world, man. I mean, the story of Joe Louis and Gar Wood and that, like, you don't have to be like, oh, I don't care about Gar Wood because I don't live in Detroit or I'm not a Detroit sports fan. Yeah, Garwood, because Garwood was international. The entire governments of England were using their, the entire naval, the entire admiralty were spending massive sums of government money
just to try to
beat Garwood. So that's like an American, like that's America versus, it's just, I'm saying like all these things happened in Detroit, but it doesn't make it any less, any less relevant for for people of other teams and sports. So I think that's that concept, I think, is the thing that I'm most proud of so far after 100 episodes. Is that we've been able to really break down how all these sports, that just how big that how much of a like sort of a fulcrum, like a like a pivot that 1935 was into the evolution of professional sports as we know it today.
We got presidents and future presidents involved in the story.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan was interviewed Eldon Ocker before the second game of the 1935 World Series.
The interesting thing I found was in the Willis Ward story was as the turmoil was happening there at the University of Michigan, and the kid at the student newspaper there wrote a scathing editorial. That kid writing for the college paper was Arthur Miller.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm saying like you have some of the big. It's I'm
like
saying like
Arthur Miller, is involved in this story. That's
what I mean. You have all these different people that are.
I love it, and Stroh's beer.
Yeah, we had to talk about Stroh's beer
because we got to drink Stroh's beer.
Yeah,
that made me happy.
Yeah, well,
and then Small World, the Stroh's ice cream factory is now the whiskey factory for Detroit City Distillery, where they do their distilling and their rick house, and they do events there. We're gonna be doing on the Man Cave Happy Hour. We're gonna be doing an episode there live. They have this bespoke tour where you get to go in and you try like the white dog, and you go through and you're trying stuff right out of the barrels.
Yeah,
it's a small curated. That might be an episode I might be
interested in joining on, bro, if you're doing that show.
So, but again, the Stroh's ice cream.
I'm not drinking out of a wood cask.
And there's so many things in it. It's like I'm excited because it's like I was telling the owner about the champion story.
I can see the excitement in your face
and
right now.
I know. He was like, what?
I'm so
he was like, what? And I was telling him, he's like pumped about the City of Detroit story, and then how it ties with the Stroh's ice cream factory that they're in now is the whiskey factory. There could be some.
Well, let me know.
On the horizon there too.
If there's an invite for that Stroh's, for that
tour.
Yeah, man, I might take that little whiskey.
I'll let you know. But again, 100 episodes. Thank you so much for being with us, and we have episode 100 to do. We're getting back in the water.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like Herbert Mendelson is like.
Is that who we're talking about?
Yeah,
today?
His name is Herbert Mendelson.
All right.
And so of course, Gar Wood we devoted many episodes towards, right? He's my favorite story.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that there was another speedboat champion in 1935.
Really?
And that's what's kind of crazy is you had this guy. And so what's interesting about Herbert Mendelson's story is that 35 is like really 35 is really like his first success. And so Herbert Mendelson's story, basically this is we're going to read, his success in 35, but this was kind of like the first race he ever entered because the boat he won this. So the trophy that he won is called the President's Trophy.
Okay.
Right. And so, they call it the President's Cup or the President's Trophy. And so anyways, it's on the Potomac River. And so really there's really two major boat races, or there was this race hasn't been run since looks like 1999.
All right.
But there's like two major, the two biggest, unlimited power, hydroplane boats, races there are is the Gold Cup in Detroit and the President's Cup on the Potomac River.
Right.
So it was like the two big ones. And so, so in this particular, so in 1935 in September, which was, it was the same day as you talk about the 7-month stretch of time. So he wins the President's Cup on September 29th, which is the same day that Walter Hagen concludes the Ryder Cup. He's the captain of the Ryder Cup champions. They conclude the Ryder Cup on the day that Hagen that Mendelson wins this President's Cup. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also 1 week before the Tigers win the World Series. It's the final day of the Tigers season. Man. So you're talking about within 7 months, some of these are happening the same day.
Yeah.
Right. There's so much sports information, champions coming through. They're just, all they're doing is just chalking it up.
If these pencils were running.
Yeah. They're like, we just got to keep track via, with a checklist,
Yeah.
And so that's what they're saying. Like every day they're seeing some other new Detroit person winning a championship of some nature. So here's the article that came out on the day. It was, he won the race the previous day, which is September 29th, 1935. And this article comes out September 30th, 1935. And it's just a Detroit Times article. I don't actually have an author for it. It was sort of a Detroit Times, just an editorial or sports editorial of some type. So it says right, so Detroit Boat Cup winner. So in lone possession of the choppy waters of the Potomac, Herbert Mendelson's makeshift Gold Cup boat, the Notre Dame, yesterday raced to an uncontested first place in the President's Cup 45-mile test. The sleek white and chromium Thunderbolt, powered by a 24-cylinder motor made by Fred Duesenberg shortly before his death, leaped and skidded to victory in the third and final heat in a one-boat race. Bill Horn, winner of the second heat, whose Hotsy Totsy capsized in the first heat of the race, developed motor trouble at the very start of the third heat, and every semblance of competition left the course immediately. Notre Dame, running a good 30 miles an hour under its peak speed, loafed home at an average of 41 miles per hour to capture the coveted trophy for the first time. It was the first successful race that the Notre Dame has participated in since being built earlier this year. If the boat is remembered for nothing else, it will be as winner of the last restricted cup race. Next year, there'll be so if the boat is remembered for nothing else, it will be as winner of the last restricted Gold Cup race. Next year, there will be no limitations placed on the power or size of Gold Cup boats.
Okay.
So, which made me wonder, did he win the Gold Cup? I didn't really understand that concept because I looked it up in 35 and it wasn't, and it was a man named George Reese who won the 1935 Gold Cup. That's at least what Wikipedia says, but. So I don't really quite understand what he meant by he was the winner of the last restricted Gold Cup race. But nonetheless, Herbert Mendelson won the 1935 President's Cup, and so he was in that City of Champions newspaper. He's featured on there. there's a speedboat on there, and that's one of the images we have to show.
All right.
Anybody that's seen you're looking at it right now. That's that big picture at the bottom. That's that square image.
Not that.
Oh, you're looking at the giant one with all the platoons on it.
All right.
Yeah. The main spread with the 20. There it is. Yeah. So he's right in the center in the top, right next to Garwood.
Yeah. It says Dynamic Detroit on it. All right. So there it is.
Right next to the Miss America 10, and that boat is not to scale of the Miss America 10.
Yeah.
There's no boat to scale the Miss America 10, or that thing would be the size that they have to pay.
Yeah.
So
it's
anyways,
like a Greyhound and a Volkswagen.
yeah.
Bug.
So they I think they enlarged his boat a little bit to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is the other boat. And it's like, no, that's not. It's in the same category as the Miss America 10. But nonetheless, he won a significant trophy. And did you I hear you ask me how significant it was? I thought that's what you asked. If you flip to the next slide, you can actually see a picture of there's a picture online of Herbert Mendelson actually accepting the President's Cup from Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Oh my God.
With a whole room full of dignitaries.
Oh my God.
So that's how, so the race seems a bit anticlimactic, where they're like, he loafed home at, there's nobody else in the race. All the other boats basically failed to even, they even register because they had engine problems and stuff. So the race itself was fairly wasn't like, they were cutting it to the wire and he turned in the inside just barely to win the race or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some kind of, hotly. So the race was basically his because his boat survived it, which like a lot of the races we've seen.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's
if
like
your boat could actually just get to the finish line, that was
could take the pounding.
Yeah. Your boat had to not only be maneuverable and fast, it actually had to be able to finish a 45-mile race. That was a major part of it. So his boat did finish, and thus he won. And the boat was called the Notre Dame. And here he is with Franklin Delano Roosevelt getting his trophy.
Yeah.
So it was a significant race. You know what I mean? You don't get invited to the White House to accept the trophy, unless it's it does say President's Cup on it. So of course the president it wouldn't be in a President's Cup without the president giving it to you, I guess. But when it says President's Cup, it wasn't just some generic name slapped onto it. It was literally the President of the United States giving it to you. Right. So that was it, so it was it was a significant achievement, man. As a champion, how many boat racers get invited to the White House and get the trophy,
Yeah.
So anyway, so there he is, and that picture was taken on November 20th, 1935. Yeah. So there he is. So it's anyways. So I got a couple little notes here. So who is Herbert Mendelson?
Who was Herbert Mendelson?
See, I didn't even have this in my book because at the time, I didn't really have, I looked online and stuff. Right. There wasn't back in 2014. There wasn't the information there is today. But we're blessed now with some information. So Herbert Mendelson and his father, Aaron Mendelson, were the original financial backers of the Fisher Body Corps.
Oh my gosh.
Which later became General Motors. So you think that guy had some dough?
Yeah.
Think he had some money to put on his speedboats?
Yeah, I think
like
maybe.
Garwood invented the dump truck, the hydraulic hoist for dump trucks. That gave him enough money to do speedboat racing. Like, this guy wasn't, he didn't just build this boat in his basement, as a part of like spare parts from disassembling his, like a ping pong table or pool table or something, like the guy, or finding scrap wood in the backyard.
This is maybe not the first time he and FDR were hanging out.
No, it might not have been. So they might even have created the trophy. Well, the first trophy set was 1926. So
right.
But anyways, he's like, hey Herbert, I heard you won that my trophy. Come on to the White House, So he's like mega rich, basically.
Right.
Like he's not, like I say, he's not building the boat out of scrap wood in the backyard, man. This guy's like, yeah, build me a sweet boat. I'm interested in racing. So like I said, what's interesting about him though is, so this is like the first thing he's done was this Gold Cup race.
Yeah.
And so so he's got a daughter named Shirley. And so from this point, from 1935 until I think her finale, like her like the end of her racing sort of career was in the 70s. But she's in the Hall of Fame. She's in the unlimited hydroplane Hall of Fame. His daughter is.
Oh,
these people like Herbert, and then especially his daughter Shirley, would be like prominent roles in the world of speedboat racing for the rest of their lives. So like Garwood, I mean, he was he's the absolute legend, of course. But these are the type of people who are like basically like like the backbone of the actual. Like Garwood was just like, I'm in it for the boat building. You know what I mean? He wasn't necessarily in it for like the committees and like the development of the overall, like, the sitting on like the board of directors and that type of thing. But these people they were interested in the actual, like the development of like these, of the sport itself.
Well, I love the picture of Shirley here in the boat. It's like just a classic.
Yeah. It's like
shot.
that 50s look.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. It looks like she's got a big steering wheel,
Yeah.
like she's almost in a car. But if you look, it's like, no, that's a boat on the water.
So let me read this.
Or is that a car on the pier?
No, that's a boat.
That's a boat.
It's a boat. I think it's a boat. Looks like one. You can see the water bagger. But but anyway, so I've got a little article to read. It's not little, it's a little bit lengthy, but so it's because this guy can do a little better job. He did a great job diving into the story way more than, I was going to try to take a bunch of notes, but this guy did a fantastic job. So I'm just going to read through his sort of intro. And but I've used this site. We've used this site before for information. It's the Hydroplane and Race Boat Museum. It's the online Hydroplane and Race Boat Museum, and the actual website is thunderbirds.ning.com. And his name is Fred Farley, and the article is called "The Notre Dame Story Continued." And the full article, it's really recommended if you're interested in any of this. What's interesting about this, and I've been realizing this more and more, like the more of these different articles I've read for Garwood and for these different sections,
right?
Man, these people that are into speedboat racing are really into it. I mean, they talk about people that I've never even heard of, and they're like the legendary person. Like there's people that it's like, people are like Babe Ruth to them, and I've never even heard their name. I mean, like these people are really into it, and they break down, like there'll be one little component of this that he'll write that I found a whole nother article for, because somebody was like contesting one little thing in his article, and he wrote this whole other expansive thing defending his point. So I'm just going to read to this intro. If you want to read the full thing, because it expands upon it and takes through to their whole story, it's recommended. Again, it's thunderbirds.ning.com, and it's the Hydroplane and Race Boat Museum. And the story is "The Notre Dame Story Continued," and his name is Fred Farley. So between the years 1935 and 1973, one of APBA racing's most prestigious teams was the Notre Dame, owned by Detroit industrialist Herb Mendelson and his daughter Shirley Mendelson McDonald. The elder Mendelson served on Notre Dame University's Board of Commerce, which advised university officials on business matters. Herb and Shirley asked for and received permission to use the university's name and insignia on the Mendelson racing boats. Herb Mendelson passed away in 1951. Mrs. McDonald died in 1993. Herb Mendelson entered big-time boat racing in 1935 and achieved almost instant success. The first craft to carry the Notre Dame handle into competition scored a victory in the 1935 President's Cup at Washington, D.C., with Clell Perry driving. Mendelson was already an experienced racer in 1935. Herb had previously campaigned a series of 5 limited inboard Chris Craft runabouts, all named Madoshumi. Shirley Mendelson was her father's constant boat racing companion. Frail health notwithstanding, Shirley absorbed race strategy and politics at an early age. She never forgot the thrills and tensions of the sport, from the pain of losing to the pride of winning, in particular the day when her father won the Gold Cup, the APBA's crown jewel, on September 6, 1937. So he won in 37 as well. He won the Gold Cup in 1937. So in all, 9 different hulls raced as Notre Dame. Herb campaigned the first 3 between 1935 and 1947, when Shirley raced in the last 6 between 1962 and 1973.
Wow.
All of Herb's boats were step hydroplanes, and each utilized a supercharged 24-cylinder Duesenberg engine, one of the more expensive power plants in racing history, which cost a figure reported to be in the 5 digits. The original Notre Dame won a hard-fought victory in the 1937 Gold Cup on home waters at Detroit. Driver Perry and riding mechanic Ernie Herndon traded heat wins with Italian Count Theo Rossi in Alleghe, powered by an Isata Fraschini engine. And just to prove that the Gold Cup performance was anything but a fluke, Mendelson and Perry made it 2 in a row a few weeks later with a victory in the 1937 President's Cup. So he won that again too.
All right.
For 1938, a new Notre Dame was entered but never made it to the starting line. Clell Perry flipped the boat on the day prior to the Gold Cup race and was badly injured. Count Rossi was reported so distraught after the accident that he considered withdrawing from the race, which he ultimately won with Alleghe, which must be his boat's name. The unsuccessful second Notre Dame came back in 1939 for another try after being redesigned by John Hacker and rebuilt by new driver Dan Arena, who had made a tremendous impression the year before as pilot of the Miss Golden Gate. Notre Dame the second managed an overall third in the 1939 Gold Cup behind Guy Simmons in My Sin and Harold Wilson in Miss Canada 3. But owner Mendelson was dissatisfied with the hull and ordered a new boat to be designed and built by Arena for 1940. Arena would have preferred a 3-point engine as Miss Golden Gate had been, but Mendelson insisted on another step configuration. Notre Dame the third had a successful debut season despite not being able to finish at the Gold Cup. Arena steered her to victory at the President's Cup and set a supercharged Gold Cup class mile straightaway record of 100 miles, 0.987. The record stood for 6 years. Arena and Notre Dame also participated in the 1940 National Sweepstakes Regatta at Red Bank, New Jersey, where Notre Dame recorded a 2.5-mile competition lap at 76 miles per hour. Ooh. This translated to approximately 81 miles per hour on a standard 3-mile course. This achievement was not exceeded until 1948. With the advent of World War II and gasoline rationing, APBA boat racing was suspended for the duration. The Notre Dame team did not reappear until 1947. But then the Gold Cup class had changed over to the unlimited class. The Allison V12 was now the new engine of choice, but Mendelson and Arena elected to stay with their tried and proven Duesenberg. At that 1947 Gold Cup in Jamaica Bay, New York, Notre Dame posted the fastest heat, 56.8 miles an hour, and the fastest lap, 62.6 miles an hour, but experienced mechanical difficulty and didn't finish the race. 3 weeks later, Notre Dame captured the Silver Cup at Detroit, which consisted of 2 heats of 45 miles each on a 4.5-mile course, with Dan Arena behind the wheel and brother Gene Arena alongside as riding mechanic. The Mendelson team ran head-to-head with Harold Wilson in Miss Canada 3 and beat Wilson over the finish line in Heat 1, 73 miles an hour to 73.5 miles an hour, so 73.6 to 73.5. In Heat 2, Notre Dame ran a steady second behind Guy Lombardo and Miss Great Lakes, which hadn't finished the first heat. This gave Notre Dame a victory total of 700 points compared to 469 for second place Miss Canada 3. The final appearance in competition of a Herb Mendelson-owned craft occurred at the 1947 President's Cup on the Potomac River. Notre Dame finished second, but was beaten in all 3 heats by Danny Foster and Miss Peps 5, and Allison-powered three-pointer. The handwriting was clear on the wall. Notre Dame was obsolete. 3-point hulls with the large World War II fighter plane engines were the future of the sport. Cut loose by Mendelson, Notre Dame III passed through many hands. She was renamed Miss Frosty in 1948, Gale 1 in 1950, and Miss Wayne in 1953. She recorded her last appearance in competition at Chuck Doran's Miss Ricochet in 1959 when she finished third at a race in St. Clair, Michigan, with Bill Matthews driving. By 1962, Shirley Mendelson was ready to enter unlimited racing. For several seasons, she had campaigned a 20-foot Mariner Cyclone named Shoo Shoo in the gentleman's runabout class, with Don Delano driving. The boat had won the Orland Johnson Trophy in 1960, 61, and 62. Where we heard that before.
Yeah.
So there's a trophy named after him. Orland Johnson had a trophy named after him. Mm-hmm. And also the Governor's Trophy at the Salt River Yacht Club in Monroe, Michigan. Years of world travel, business ventures, and passing interest in other sports had never erased the lure of powerboat racing. Shirley was now married to Dr. Fraser McDonald, her second husband, who had served as Herb Mendelson's physician. Mrs. McDonald was one of the wealthiest women in America. Her total fortune in 1963 was conservatively estimated at $97 million. Shirley asked the University of Notre Dame for permission once again to carry its name and seal into competition. Permission was granted. The boat was purchased from builder Les Stodacker, and the rest is history. It would be a pleasure to report that Shirley McDonald's level of success in thunderbolt racing matched that of her father. Unfortunately, in 12 years of participation, Miss McDonald's team accounted for only 2 victories. But this was due to no lack of persistence on her part, which earned Shirley the respect of her fellow competitors. The fortunes of an unlimited hydroplane team never run smoothly. But for Shirley Mendelson McDonald, the fates seemed to have stacked the deck. One of her boats burned, 3 were wrecked, 1 crew chief died during spring testing, one driver perished in competition. Shirley herself was sidelined by a succession of ailments. It was a rugged journey that many participants would have abandoned, but not Shirley. She did not complain when her boats lost. Rather, the woman in coveralls boosted the entire sport with her enthusiasm.
Man.
So, like, the whole thing with Herbert Mendelson is, and this is what I thought was kind of interesting. And if you do read that article, it's good. It goes on and it talks about her entire career. And we have a website here that shows a lot of the boats that they built, which were all, a lot of them were based off of the original. And a lot of them was the same boat. They just painted it with a different name on it.
Got to paint over the burn marks on this one.
Yeah. But what's interesting is it's like Garwood, like we leave off with Garwood in 1930, in 1932, 33, when through 35, of course, he got challenged by Mussolini, but he didn't actually race in 35. He just maintained the Harmsworth Trophy at that point. But what's interesting about Mendelson and his daughter Shirley is they sort of take the reins from there and they carry on the legacy of Detroit winners and, in Detroit, just Detroiters in powerboat racing.
The hydroplane races.
They
continued on.
They carry the story forward, into the 40s, 50s, 60s, and
it was
even
the longest
70s.
running trophy for the longest time.
Yeah,
they actually took a pause. And
so this, what are you talking about, the Gold Cup or the President's Cup?
The Gold Cup just took a pause. But it was the longest running one for
what I'm saying though is that like this, but when you just get glimpses of these stories like this, like there's I wish this is the thing I kind of wish about Powerball racing. If I don't know if it's an advice or what, and maybe if somebody's listening, they could think about this possibility, which is, man, the heritage and the story of Powerboat racing goes all the way back.
Yeah.
And these are unbroken, like the American Powerboat Association. These people, this is the group that was there. They were there when Garwood was there. Yep. They have a legacy. This isn't just like some fly-by-night company. The people like within the sport are die-hard. People that spend hundreds of millions. One of the sort of mentions in this story was this Italian Count Rossi, who seemed like he had a nice rivalry going with with Herbert Mendelson, their boats. And the same thing with like Garwood and K Don and Garwood and Great Britain and stuff like this. Like, these are fascinating to me, anyways. These are fascinating, interesting stories. Whenever you have a rivalry between two people, or in Garwood's case versus a country, and I think some of these stories, like what's their effort been to get this story out to the mainstream public?
Right.
You know what I mean? To the rant, just like, even like, well, people don't like, well, power boating is a niche sport. Yeah. But the stories are, like I said, the Garwood story is my favorite story of all of them.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you try to get some of this stuff out and try to appeal to the masses? Because once you understand the history of the sport and all the different like rivalries and champions and the legacy and the sort of the lineage, then it takes you all the way up to the modern day to like, this is the current champion and that's their opponent. That's their rival. They're from this other country. They're from Canada. Canada thinks they're better than us. You know what I mean? Hype the sport up with, for sorry, you call it, for lack of a better word, normies.
Yeah.
Normies that aren't in that particular world, that might just have a passing curiosity to come down to the riverfront, pay their $25 or whatever for a ticket and spend the day on the river, seeing something they maybe never have done before, So I just think that it's like the history. They have such a deep and rich history, and it's fragmented all over the place. Like Speedboat Kings should be like a book that's in like every high school.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in Michigan anyways, that should be in every high school. That, like, what if they got that into every library in Michigan, for instance, somehow, like a fundraising effort to buy enough copies to distribute across Michigan, because that, what I'm trying to say is like, once there's like a sort of a, people have like an understanding of the history and the tradition of it, some of the folklore and everything behind it as well. I think that, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about like, this like, oh, well, they're taking a pause or whatever. It's like, maybe there would be some more money in the coffers if there was, if it wasn't such a like, because like I say, I would have never even been exposed to this.
Right.
If it wasn't for Garwood, I've never been to the races or anything. So,
so a lot of those pictures came from Hydroplane History. It's hydroplanehistory.com. They'll be linked in the comments. And the story that you read, you can send me a link to that. We'll put that in there as well.
I think it's from the same site, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
So they're but they I can send you.
All right,
it'll take me
not a second, but
anyways, so that if you did, were you scrolling through there and showing the pictures?
I was going through.
It's just cool because you see that a lot of I think there was like 4 different boats that were part of these images, and they just repainted them for different reasons, like different sponsors and different. But it's just interesting. Whoever put this together did a fantastic job, like showing the boat's evolution.
Yeah,
and these are when Shirley owned it. This is when she got interested in sort of running it.
Yeah,
and they have it all the way to the very end. I didn't catch in the in the photos or in the information where
shot of Belle Isle in the background.
Yeah, I know. I saw it, and there's one. Yeah, there's one that show that one that has like does it have the Renaissance Center? Or it has some kind of backdrop with a Detroit building in the background. But yeah, but it shows. It's just cool. I don't even know where if that boat exists today or not.
Right.
But I can't imagine they would just scrap it.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, those final Notre Dames, they seem like they're almost like kind of legendary in their own right because they were used in something that's like a Miss Budweiser. It filled in as a Miss Budweiser one year.
Yeah.
So I mean, you got a Miss Budweiser on there. That's pretty sweet, So, anyways, so that's what I mean. What I think is kind of cool about Herbert Mendelson is like, whereas Gar Wood's career was sort of tailing off at this point, his was like, the Notre Dame and the Mendelsons were just getting going. And it gives, again, it's another reason why you're looking into this story, and it gives you reason to dive into this world all the way through the 50s, 60s, 70s, to sort of pass the torch on to the next generation of power boating in Detroit. So it was at least it was interesting for me to kind of flip through some of these articles and look into it a little bit more. So
all right, so there we are, episode 100 in the books.
Yeah, I think we did pretty well for it.
Yeah.
We didn't rehearse or anything, but we carried through. Mashed on. We haven't rehearsed for any of them.
No.
This is a non-rehearsal show.
So starting with 101, we're gonna do rehearsals.
We're just gonna do it live.
We're
just gonna do it live.
All right. So yeah, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Wearingfunny.com. You can get the shirt that I mentioned, and yeah. So,
here's to another 100 more.
All the podcast things and all the podcast spaces. Where
to another 100 more episodes, dude. Imagine what we're going to be in 200 episodes.
Yeah,
we're going to be doing super chats and all that stuff, man. People are messaging it right now.
Heck yeah. So stick around. Much more to come on Detroit City of Champions, the podcast.